Tuberculosis is the silent killer, which is taking away more lives than any other disease or natural disaster has in recent times across the globe. And now, this ancient disease has acquired a contemporary edge. Its synergy with HIV puts the world face to face with a deadly partnership that accounts for nearly 30% of all deaths among people living with HIV/AIDS. Also, inadequate treatment for TB, coupled with the TB-HIV co-infection, is slowly giving way to newer, more potent forms of the disease. That is not just multi-drug resistance or MDR, but even extremely drug resistant. The TB bacillus already infects a shocking 2 billion people globally, more than 1/3 of whom reside in India and Southeast Asia. And today, TB is the leading cause of death for people living with HIV/AIDS, as they are 10 times more likely to develop TB. This has been seen in Africa during the last decade. The co-infection would be as devastating for people living with HIV/AIDS in Southeast Asia and India because of their high TB burden.
There are countries where the prevalence of HIV among people living with TB is as high as 68%. I mean, I'm talking particular about countries like Zimbabwe or South Africa. In countries like India, it's much lesser. However, the risk still remains. People living with HIV have the highest risk for dying of tuberculosis. That in itself is something to focus on and make sure that people living with HIV have TB as one of the components, TB services as one of the components in their care and service basket.
Civil society response to address TB-HIV co-infection is still insufficient. Though NGOs are hard at work to address the TB or the HIV problem, what is required is an international and national effort to detect and treat TB in people living with HIV/AIDS. This calls for integrating India's National AIDS Control Program run by the National AIDS Control Organization or NACO and the revised National TB Control Program. This integration visualizes people living with HIV being automatically tested for TB and once tests are positive, being put on directly observed therapy short course or DOTS. Greater integration between the AIDS and TB control programs can yield vital epidemiological data, which is currently not available for most countries in Southeast Asia. It would also be necessary to ensure that patients take the complete treatment. Otherwise, they are in acute danger of developing multi-drug resistance and extreme drug resistance or XDR. Initial data from South Africa shows that XDR TB in people living with HIV/AIDS is nearly always fatal. It's a deadly partnership of different pathogens whose grip has to be loosened now.